evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to open up the August meeting of the Conservation Commission. I will remind you that we're being recorded tonight, and that has a microphone in it, so if you've got any little sidebars going on, it might pick it up, and the people at home might be listening to your sidebars, so just a caution. Did the members get a chance to review the minutes of July 17th?
Yes.
Yes.
And if there were no errors or omissions, I will entertain a motion to accept them and place them on file.
Move to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a continued notice of intent to raise an existing home and construct a new single-family dwelling from Brian and Kelly Kelly at 335th Street. Is there anyone here to represent them? It would be my recommendation that we grant a continuance until the September 18th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a continued notice of intent to construct a single-family home from Plum Island Blue LLC at 17 C. Fordham Way. Is there anyone here to represent them? My recommendation would be the same for them, that we grant a continuance to the September 18th meeting.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a continued amended NOI to make repairs to resource areas for DEP number 50-1243 from Eric Sorensen at 131, 133, 151 Scotland Road. He has requested a continuance to at least next month so that he can work through the other board's processes. I told him that if he did not show up next month, that the board would at least would require a progress report. So it is my recommendation that we grant a continuance to the September 18th meeting.
Move to continue. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a continued notice of intent to construct a single-family home from William Cliff at 25 Harvard Way. Finally, we have a live one.
I'm going to take a couple of chairs up.
Sure. Sorry about that. Usually we put them up there.
Bloody manpower.
You bring your own, huh? Oh, there you go. Okay. All right.
Good evening, Mark Rock here with Guard Consulting with Oscar Rano, representing the applicant Cliff with the proposed house at 25 Harvard Way. So at the last hearing, the commission had several comments about the proposed layout for the house. I have additional copies of this revised plan that I have for you that I've colored up, along with some additional information, just basically outlining the enhanced plantings that we're proposing within the area that's proposed. So the last plan, we've tightened up the limit of work. We've brought in everything closer together. We've added a few things that were recommended by the commission in the sense of making sure that the landing at the bottom of the staircase have actually concrete pads to prevent erosion. We added the front walk, keystone walk from the staircase there to the driveway, just to guide pedestrian traffic and keep them on a surface that's actually going to be maintained and keep them off kind of rambling around in other areas where there's going to be vegetation. I've added downspouts with rain barrels and a drip system underneath the house. So the plan is basically, primarily concern is water underneath the house. We do know that you can, if you have a house that's raised up, you can get vegetation going under it fully. So this is an example. This is something that I just, my company saw recently in Mashpee. So this is a house on Howard Beach. So this house has been in existence for about at least 8 years, I believe. I actually attached the property card in your packet in the back so you can actually see the town's photo of the house as well. And actually shows vegetation underneath it as well. So you can see the house, this house is about 10 to 12 feet off the ground. But you can see it actually has full vegetation on it. There's other photos behind that, which actually show that it's actually very robust. And that's considering that there's apparently no irrigation of any sort underneath it. So our proposal is actually basically a 4 rain barrel system that basically has a drip system on the ground surface that actually distributes the water underneath the whole house. So you actually get vegetation underneath it. And then the planting plan is basically every 2 square feet across the entire limit of work, except where there's actually surfaces proposed, which is the concrete pads, the utility rooms, and the walkway and the driveway. Otherwise, everything is basically planted in enhancement of what's already there as existing. We've worked with a local pile driving company, a landing company pile driving, and worked through what they typically do for a sequence, which is they bring their equipment on site, they lay down their mats, they mobilize, and then they lay down their mats, they come in, they work their piles from the inside out, and then remove the mats as they go. And then we have, the house is going to be prefab, so it's constructed off-site in modules. So basically you install the piles, the modules come in get dropped in one day, and then you have minimum of 2 weeks where they just tighten the fastenings between the piles and the modules, and all work around the house is done. And the only access is basically up the staircases to the utility rooms and access up the driveway. So we have a very tight construction schedule that can be completed in a time period that is ideal, because the main concern is ensuring that the vegetation that's there already is maintained, as well as enhancing it with the additional plantings.
And the timing for the planting certainly would be right for
Yes.
the fall season.
The fall season, I mean, or the spring season, I mean, it's our goal is to plant at the best time season. Our planting plan basically recommends the September 15th to October 30th as an ideal planting, or in the spring, in that window of time. And we're definitely amenable to the commission conditioning windows of time that they'd like to see planting done, and we can definitely work towards scheduling that accordingly. Because of the way the design's laid out, where we're not talking about a contractor and not how long it's going to take them to construct the house, we know it's actually going to be pretty fast, so they can actually build it beforehand and then drop it on the piers. So we feel that this submittal has more detail than the previous submittal. So the last submittal was given to the commission. It was also sent to DEP. DEP provided no additional comments for that submittal, which included an entire coverage of all the performance standards under 1028 and 1029 for the dune. And we feel that the proposal, as shown, will not impact the dune stability, will not artificially remove sand. We've looked at the wildlife habitat question with the wildlife biologists who take a look at the property and determine whether or not there was really any bird nesting habitat on there, and really found there was nothing that was anything that was likely to be used for bird nesting at all. So we feel that we've met the performance standards that are required for the activities proposed, at the same time really minimizing our footprint and really doing a service to the area by making sure that it doesn't get disturbed in the long term.
Guys, what do you think of the planting plan? There's a lot of little pushes and pulls we want to make on this, but if we can't get by the vegetation, then we're wasting our time. Is it the consensus of the board that the vegetation plan is sufficient for stabilizing the dune and permitting the home before we get into all the little minutia?
I mean, I'd probably defer to you in some respects, because you've been doing a lot more work for a long time out here.
I would say that these guys were quick learned, and it's a pretty responsible plan. The only other plan I've seen irrigation underneath was when Ross Westcott was trying to permit that roundhouse, and he had water underneath it. No one's ever done that. I know that it does not need direct sunlight. If you go up Northern Boulevard, you look at the north side of the structures, it's very robust on the north side of the structures, maybe because of the moisture, that it gets, the additional moisture. So it's my opinion that most of that vegetation is likely going to make it under that house with that additional water.
With, sorry, go ahead.
How tall is this, how high is this house?
7 feet. 7 feet.
7 feet?
Yes.
How high is it in the picture?
That house, I think it's 10 to 12. It is much higher, but it's close to me. That house too is the long way is actually north to south, so you actually get a long structure. And the house is actually bigger from a width and length if you look at the deck that actually has around it, because it actually has, it's a similar shape, but it's got a deck on the front and then just wraps around the whole side actually. So it's actually a fairly larger footprint than I think that this house here.
The good thing about this house, Bill, if I can say anything positive for it, is that all their ground impacts, their stairways, their utility shafts are all up front on the north side anyway. So you're not gonna get any vegetation there, and having that stuff all up front is generally gonna keep people from passing through there too, which is something that we're gonna.
Our proposal is to have basically a 2-foot rail that goes between all the piers around the entire house to basically prevent people from walking underneath the house at all times. Because we know that underneath the house is basically the most sensitive area for vegetation. So our plan is basically to cordon off the area from pedestrian traffic versus the house that you saw in Mashpee that's got no thing, that people can walk underneath it all day long. We're actually we have a designated area that's right off the driveway and walkway that they have access to, and then everything else is cordoned off. That prevents traffic. And again, from what I've seen in aerial photography, you can tell where people walk on this in this area. If there's a vacant lot or there's people walking between houses, you can see the path of sand. It goes from one house to the other house, and it just stays there for decades. And so the plan here is to prevent that from happening by basically cordoning off the traffic around the house, which is the most sensitive.
Where's the
area.
access to the storage?
It's right out.
Right on the driveway?
Yep.
Okay.
And then basically a 2-foot rail 2 feet off the ground around all the piers around the entire house. So basically,
Is there a rail around the storage?
so the storage it's underhung storage. So it starts 3 feet off the ground and then goes up into the house. So the rail's actually going to be underneath it.
Yeah, then my only question would be, what's the lifespan of the irrigation system, and do we need to have anything if we end up going forward as far as maintenance, making sure that it gets maintained?
When they come in for a certificate of compliance, we could always keep a condition in perpetuity on there that system would have to be maintained.
That's what I'm.
Yeah,
that's
so
what
we
I'm-
could leave that on there as an ongoing condition, to be
Yeah.
leaned on the deed forever if that's a concern.
If we think that it's.
It's viable.
Yeah, oh yeah, if we think
Yeah.
it's, if you think it's of big value and it's gonna help the vegetation under there.
I think it definitely is. I
Yeah,
think the
I think
reason that it fades away under there usually is because it's too dry.
Okay, well then I think that makes sense to have that as a order of perpetuity.
So we did use the Massachusetts Coastal Landscaping dune planting plan, which is on the MassDOT website. And all the plantings we used, we actually added a few to add the variety. So we still have, so we have the American beach grass, the barberry, the beach heather, the spike grass, the American dune grass, and the seaside goldenrod.
Excellent.
All of those basically species. And if the commission, and basically the commission wanted, if we wanted to do anything else, we'd have to come before the commission to change that. And I've got notes on all of those there directly from the actual dune planting plan that's from the Mass DEP, or the Mass and the coastal management group there. So the monitoring is for 2 years, so we have 2 years of monitoring, and the goal is to have 75% survival of the plantings. So I know you often have 75% coverage, but we actually want to say also 75% survival of the actual plantings themselves.
Okay.
So that there's oftentimes you can plant and you can get 75% coverage without all the plantings surviving or a lot of plantings surviving. Our goal is to have a lot of them survive, which gives you a more robust assurance that things are going to actually survive, which means the applicant's going to be paying attention to them, making sure they grow, making sure they're able to grow, and if they need to be replaced, they're going to be replaced because we want 75% survival.
That'll become their own little operation and maintenance manual.
To take care of.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on to a couple other issues then. Outdoor shower design, what is that? When you use that outdoor shower, what are you doing? Other than the obvious.
It's basically if you get off the beach and you want to wash off some of the sand on your feet, or that's that you might have picked up as you laid on the sand, you chase your kids around, your grandkids maybe. Basically that's it. I mean, it's a cold water shower. It's listed on the plan.
We switched it to cold, so it's not going to be a long duration shower.
No.
Okay. How
And-
high's the shower head?
Shower head is 5.5 feet off of the decking itself.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with that? The only thing I'm trying to eliminate, if this thing isn't tied into the septic system, I don't want them taking shampoos and shower, that's what it'll become when you come in from the beach. If I'm rinsing off and I got some warm water here, I might as well throw the soap on too. So I just want to make sure that we condition that so that that's really not an option.
We might be able to put a sign there as well.
How about if you just drop the shower head?
That's a good idea. If
Why don't you
would-
drop the shower head to about waist height
That's perfect.
and leave it at that?
That'd be perfect, yeah,
Okay.
and that usually works.
if the thing is misused, I mean, it doesn't really, somebody,
Well, this
2
is-
years from
yeah.
now could put a hot water shower in.
I know someone can go in and do anything after we go, I get
Well, if
that.
we keep a lot of these thoughts in the operation and maintenance manual, there will be a little bit of a thumb on the neck, to keep it fresh in the memory.
The tank details on your buried tank.
It's a 6-inch concrete slab.
And you're out of the flood zone. Not only that, that
It's
6 inch,
buried.
that 6 inch slab, if it's 6
It's-
inches, is it, how big is it, 6 by 12, 6 by 14?
It's 6 by, I think, 12, just over 12.
So there's probably enough to ballast that down anyway, so
Yeah,
if
It
it's
is.
that size,
And he
okay.
does- and they do a calc before they do a calc before they deliver that.
What are they using for a flood value for that calc, you know? Even though they don't have, well, yeah, you do have one.
We do have one.
Okay, all right, so they'll have to take that into consideration,
Correct.
how much water will be over the top of it.
Correct.
All right.
And if the commission wants to condition that those calculations be provided to them before the installation of the tank, that would definitely be agreeable.
Well, you can either give them to me, or you're gonna end up giving them to the fire department
Fire
anyway, so you go down and permit through the fire
Exactly.
department, so one of us will get it, no
Yeah,
matter
someone-
what.
yeah.
Second means of egress, dump it out on sand, you took care of that, vegetation plan.
Is this a 4-box module or a 2-box?
It's a 2-box.
2-box.
Comes in 2 pieces,
Where's the crane gonna park?
right in the driveway. And the pile driver will be in the driveway as well. So no machinery other than locating all of it under sequencing in the driveway. And it's not too heavy, it's only a 33.6 by 27.6 box, so it doesn't require the largest crane that they have, just enough ballast to swing it onto the piers.
And the last issue I had was the sewer line in the northeast corner. Could you put a 22 on that and bring that around into that driveway a little bit?
We talked to Bandings about that, and he said that he would make it all 22 to try to get it into the driveway, as long as he's not creating a clean-out situation.
Okay, and if it goes exactly in the driveway, I don't really care, but I'm trying, that corner is one of the few corners in the yard that the dune grass didn't get die off,
Right.
and so I'd like to preserve it if possible.
We'll make a note and put the note on the plan that we're gonna try to loop that into the driveway and not cut across the
Okay.
dune.
And that is it for me. That's the last issue I had on this project. Any other comments or concerns from the board?
I've just got one comment, just flipping through here, it says that there's usually a wetland scientist or a botanist to oversee the transplants. And considering, I mean, I don't know who the wetland scientist or the botanist would be,
Yep.
obviously, so I can't.
Would you like the commission to review that person's credentials before work started?
That would work, I was actually just gonna go for botanist, but
Yep. Well,
maybe we can go take that route too,
I mean,
sure.
is do typically you have a pre-construction meeting prior to work starting?
It would be a great idea.
So I think that's a great idea to have a pre-construction meeting, and if the commission wants to know who should be at that meeting, should be the managing contractor for the site, maybe probably the pile driving company,
Definitely.
maybe the modular crane company, I don't know, and then also the scientist, that they're there and bringing the credentials, if the commission wants to credentials, they ask for that as well.
Just the root of the cause being, the sensitivity of the thing is just so
Yes.
high, maybe going with a little more rather than a little less
Yep.
expertise.
Yep,
Yeah.
well, if the commission said they wanted someone with like 5 years' experience, that's typical for the Mass DEP wetland application. So that's under the wetland.
I think that makes sense to have
so-
them have that minimum standard.
Yep,
you know.
and so if the commission wants that, we're definitely amenable to that.
Okay.
That's all I
You
got.
good? Okay. Are there any butters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? We've asked for some minor changes tonight, changes that could probably be contingent upon if the board's comfortable with those, and if they are, I will close the hearing and ask for a motion. If not, then we need to talk about a continuance. Any thoughts? So we're looking for some minor thing, we're looking for a shower design.
Lower end,
We'll look,
a detail maybe, a detail where it will be, just so it's clear
yeah,
on
just,
the plan.
exactly, just, yeah, the basic though, don't
Yeah.
cost the client a lot of money. Doesn't have to be too much to show a shower head at 4 feet, so.
There were some other DEP items, elevation, do we get that?
So the DEP did ask for a profile, which we don't have, didn't bring that with me.
No.
We did have,
We did it
some
early
samples.
on though.
Yeah,
Profile, they wanted elevations?
they wanted, I think they were just looking at what it would actually look like from the side.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, we're not proposing any sladding or anything else underneath the house, which I think was probably their main concern, because their concern is making sure that the sand can move underneath the whole house.
They made it, I think you made it perfectly clear in the narrative,
Yeah.
but they don't really have the time to go through your narrative, so
Exactly.
it's probably the drawing they were looking for.
Yeah, so, that's kind of the question they raised. So we didn't provide that actual profile, because it's a fairly, we're not proposing anything that's strange underneath the house at all. It's pretty straightforward. You got 2 staircases, the underhang and everything else is open.
I think the only other change I didn't talk about was the sewer line change.
Yep, that's right, yeah, I got that added.
And I'll go back to the board once more to ask them if they're comfortable closing the public hearing tonight.
Seems pretty thorough to me, I don't see a need to drag it out.
No, I don't think we have any more questions or concerns for them, just to get these things on paper.
Conditions, yeah.
All right. Then I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on the project.
If we approve, subject to the contingencies that we've already noted.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
And then do you want me to refrain from this one, because I'm just rolling it in?
Yeah, I don't, you haven't really taken and watched, you haven't watched the previous meetings.
Right, I missed out, yeah.
So then
I've read the minutes.
it
but-
would probably be wise for you to abstain in
Technically
this,
be
because you
abstain,
haven't,
right.
yeah, you haven't been here enough. And the same for you, Bill, I don't think you've attended enough hearings, but even
Okay.
without you, we have it, so.
You still have enough people?
Well, all as we need is a majority of a quorum left to vote on something, so.
So 2 extensions. We're both abstaining.
Yes, yes. They haven't been here for enough of the
Yeah.
meetings to,
Right.
yeah.
Understood, yep. Thank you for participating, so.
Yes.
Okay, if you put a drainage pan, you can put under the outdoor shower to send it into the.
Well, yeah, there is, but what happens when you start doing that, you might as well put an addition on, because now you've got to, I'm gonna make you enclose it overhead, I don't want all that rainwater being treated at the
Sure,
report
yeah.
septic system, so, yeah, then it becomes an indoor shower at that point.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys, take care. I just wanna get rid of those. We have a continued amended notice of intent to reduce the footprint of the proposed single-family home and change the foundation type to poured concrete from Derek Goodson at 58 Old Raleigh Road. I don't think that Mr. Goodson is going to move this forward, but I have heard from the owner who intends to come back and ask for a redesign of the septic system, of the foundation type. So it would be my recommendation that we continue this to the September 18th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have a continued notice of intent to relocate and maintain an existing dock from Barbara and Jurgen Kaneski at 77 Riverfront.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Very good. have Jurgen Cadesti here. And
Hi, Jurgen, how are you doing?
Jennifer, I sent this to you earlier, I wanna make sure everyone else got a copy. After our last hearing last month, I did memorialize in writing the changes that we had talked about making to the dock, to straighten out the alignment to be within the easement. We wanted to get the response from Fish and Wildlife, and we wanted to get a DEP file number assigned. And so there's a letter that discusses, at that last public hearing, just that realigning the footbridge, making sure there was a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of height and width of the structure.
On your, just one interruption, on your 1-to-1,
Yeah.
30 inches is to the bottom.
Okay, yeah,
So for 30 wide, I need 30 clear, okay?
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
all,
that's
that's the
fine.
only difference.
and then to have quarter to, I think a half-inch slat spacing, quarter to a half-inch, to make sure that if their grass needs to grow underneath that, there's adequate sunlight. So we did revise the site plan, had this letter, along with Fish and Wildlife, saying that it will not adversely affect any of the resources there. And then there was a DEP file number that was assigned, I just looked at the website today before I came, and that number is 050-1267.
Great. I don't have any questions for the applicant. It is in line, it's replacing of an existing, it was just processing technical data to get straightened out for this month. So again, I have no additional questions. If anybody on the board does, please feel free. Everybody?
Anything with chapter 91?
Yeah, the department did ask for them to send through a copy of the chapter 91 license.
That's all set?
That's up to them.
Okay.
So when you go through and tell the chapter 91 steps?
You would think that once a DEP gets this, they're gonna wanna see it, but
Yeah.
we'll see what they do with it.
Right.
It's up to them.
It's just being clear that us checking it off doesn't mean we can build it, right?
No, because what'll happen is we have a generic, well, not generic, we have an order of conditions, and it's somewhat generic, and that one will get checked on this one. You must obtain all other necessary permits.
I was
So
vocalizing
that, well, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, because it's about 7 pages long, most don't read it.
Yeah.
So, and also just for my edification, I don't deal with docks that often. Is that not the dock permit that we applied for here locally?
No, you didn't apply for a chapter 91 permit here. Chapter 91 permit comes from the state.
Okay.
And the chapter 91 permit is relative to tidelands. And it's relative to the ACEC. So what you're gonna end up with is likely showing them, if you don't already have the license for it, that you're out of the ACEC. If you have a license, then it doesn't matter where it is, it's grandfathered.
Oh, okay, and I just wouldn't know that, that would have been, what, 35 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know either, so, I don't know if it's.
Been a dock there longer than anyone here.
Yeah, and if it might predate the program, you might be able to show through pictures it predates the program. Although they did, even if it predated the program, I think they did have some amnesty times where you were grandfathered up to that point, but if you didn't come in for the amnesty, then your grandfathering went away. But that's up to them, that's their process.
And what do we call the local harbor master permit for dock?
A 10A, you know about your 10A, you must have got one of those each year to put the float portion of it in,
Yes.
and that comes from the harbor master, not us.
But that's not a substitute for a 91 license?
It is not, no. It is a substitute for a state permit for the pier, but not for the 91.
Okay.
Anything else from the board? Are there any abutters here? Would anyone like to speak? I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
And 2 more abstentions?
You weren't here at the last
Right,
hearing.
exactly.
Neither was Bill.
Bill
Bill
was
was
here,
here,
but not as a-
but not on,
Right, there
you
wasn't
didn't
official.
sit. So, yeah, I would say that it's probably safer for both of you to abstain.
Right, just to keep our sort of.
Yeah.
Have they been officially sworn in?
Oh, they're officially sworn, oh, definitely,
I heard there was a
no.
problem in one jurisdiction for years, members sat there and they weren't sworn in and they started questioning all of the prior decisions.
Oh, in this town here, if you're not sworn in, they will come get you.
Right.
And they will make sure that you're sworn in, so. No, you don't get a paycheck unless you're sworn in, so there's a real incentive to do that.
All right.
Yeah.
After the order of conditions is issued, is there a need to record that?
Yeah, there's a 10-day appeals period that starts the day after the postmark on the envelope. Now, what we do is we keep your copy here, we send one off to the DEP. Once we send the one off to the DEP, that'll start the 10-day appeals period, and we'll write right on your envelope when that is ripened, that you can go down and implement it. Prior to going down and doing the work, you do need to record it at the Essex County Registry of Deeds. It becomes a lien on the deed. I don't know if you're gonna do it or the next party's gonna do it. If the next party's gonna do it, in this case, it's an asset, not a liability, but that's up to you and the attorneys as to how you're gonna perform and hang on with this. Because it goes with the land. If you move, it doesn't go with you, it goes with the property. Okay?
All right, thanks, we appreciate it.
All right, folks, have a good one.
It's about 18-month process, right?
Yeah, I bet,
Yeah.
because they don't have a lot of help with that.
It's like 18 months right now.
Karen Cumberland, I'm not even going to read that one, that was continued to the September 18th meeting already. We have a request for determination of applicability to resurface an existing driveway from James Callahan at 22 Southern Boulevard. Come on up, folks, please. This was from the Callahan's. And then Jennifer was good enough to go on and find a picture, because any of the pictures that we had on my map, pictometry, they all showed this after the impact. So I'm assuming that your water and sewer came in here?
The water came up one side, sewer came up the other, but we,
Because this side looked more disturbed in the recent photos than this side.
well, this, that was more disturbed. More erosion of the surface.
Okay. I just really wanted to show the board that this driveway was in existence prior to the water and sewer. This side's in pretty good shape still up to around here. That big green thing is just a pin in the front yard. It's not a lot of water.
One in which.
It'd be a great Christmas tree.
It's almost 40 years old.
That's an 03 picture. So,
Same surface type.
yeah, which blacktop?
Okay. So it was blacktop, will be
Yes.
blacktop upstairs.
Any questions for the applicant? Are there any abutters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? There was a 10-day appeals period with this as well, so the same speech you just heard me give to the last party goes for this project also. So we'll write out the determination, we send a copy off to DEP, we'll have a date on your copy when your copy will clear, as soon as your copy is cleared, which is about 2 weeks after we write it. So I'll come in sometime this week and try and get these out, then Jennifer has some work to do on them, so it generally takes us a week or a week and a half to get them out of the hall. And then the 10-day appeals period starts, and it's 10 state working days, no weekends, no holidays. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Also,
Take
you
care.
guys do great with street view.
I'm sorry?
Have you seen your house on street view? You can't see it, there's a big bush right where they took a picture.
That's unbelievable. They can do those things now.
That's good, that's good.
I mean, privacy, right?
I know,
You like it.
Is the Nanko zone. We have a notice of intent for the construction of a parking area for future use, a propane tank pad, and the extension of the existing guardrail and expansion of the existing stormwater basin from stowaway storage at 23 Sled Road. Bill, we still have you as 23 Sled Road, but that's not your address, is it?
No, it's 131 Newbury Turnpike.
Okay. Throw those around the table. Sure, you can open that. I was gonna open this one up, but sure. But let-
Really, I actually went on the digital thing, and checked stuff out, but the plan wasn't on there.
It was a catch.
It was,
Yeah, I'll show you how to do that.
okay, yeah, I just,
Isn't it nice having
because the first,
though?
yeah, there was, great, the first one had the plans at the very end, the 24 Old Raleigh had the
Yeah,
plans.
I had to play around with how I did some of them to see the best way to do it.
It was awesome, though, thank you for doing it, it was great.
Get some stuff on Chris. Okay.
sure which is,
That's either one, whatever you wanna give us. This one works. Keep that right here, I guess.
Maybe next week could be like the Board of Selectmen to get tablets. Yeah,
You maybe.
I already got them.
I think we'd be like you guys.
You already have them.
That's another one? Okay.
Two separate,
Two separate lists?
separate
All
letters.
right, can I have your list too? I'm gonna pass all this down to Jen. And how about your tear sheet, or at least a copy of it? Throw that right on in too, please. Thank you.
want these as well? Or is that good?
And the copies of these.
Okay. Is this the highway?
Yeah, this is Route 1.
This the first building?
no, that's actually
Oh,
the,
where are we here?
that's actually the,
This is the back of the site, so there's four
Alright,
more
yeah.
buildings going, so the highway's up there, and that's the first building.
that's the,
What is this?
that's the fourth building.
Yeah.
So there's three buildings that were considered phase one.
Yeah.
This is the fourth, fifth, and sixth building, which are completely constructed, just waiting on power. And then the last two buildings, the seventh and eighth building, will probably be done within 3 weeks or so.
But the area we're talking about tonight, go ahead, Chris, if you wanna start, yeah.
Oh, sure. I'm Chris Rook with Millennium Engineering in Bill D. Francisco, from Stowaway Storage. We are here, Bill has cleared a little further out than what was proposed originally. He needed more storage area for stockpiling and all that good stuff. So he's cleared out, we originally had shown up to just beyond where the reserve area for the septic system will be. So he's cleared out a little further.
About 125 feet.
We've also, in the meantime, we've expanded the constructed wetland in this area, so it's bigger than what was proposed originally.
So what happened was that we ran into considerable ledge, and if anybody wants to see photos, I have photos. There's a large area of ledge that runs all the way back here. We had to end up pinning this foundation down because of the ledge. Because of the ledge in the constructed wetland, we dug down below the bottom of the constructed wetland, and the ledge went beyond that. So even if we hammered it all out, there was still ledge beyond it, which was impervious. So in order to, we got together with Chris on site and with the site contractors, and we added this little corner right here to the constructed wetland, and we made the berm foot forward, and by doing that, you can see in the letter that you have in front of you, the constructed wetland increased about 45% in volume.
That was a big increase.
34 to 52.
And here's a shot of the constructed wetland right there. And this is some of the ledge we took out of the site for phase two, and that's what's being stockpiled right back here. So there are three on-site construction changes. One would be natural gas could not get enough pressure to give me natural gas for these two buildings, which are climate controlled. So I had to put a propane tank in. And the propane tank is located right here. The second change was the ledge from the constructed wetland. And as I explained before, what we did is we made it a little bit larger, we raised the berm, and now the volume has increased in the constructed wetland. And the third thing was back here, we cleared an extra 125 feet. When we did phase one, we had a large storage area to store materials and the buildings when they came and fill. With phase two, we just never, you know, permitted it to begin with. And that's where we're keeping equipment and rocks.
We're trying to stockpile the area for phase one up here, a huge pile, a huge area, but didn't really take into consideration for phase two that we need more space out back here, so.
So
That's the
right
reason
now,
for the
right
delay.
now, until you can get your crusher out there and start working the rock that are out there, for the most part, this is gonna be storage of the leftover rock and whatever pieces of equipment you're using to handle that rock.
Correct.
And then once that is cleaned up, it's gonna become a crushed stone area for potential overflow of boat storage and parking and those kind of, that purpose.
Correct, but this piece of ledge shown on your plan is a lot larger. Once you, it's more like this, so.
Is it gonna interfere, but it looks like on the plan here, Chris's plan, that everything's coming back to those two catch basins that are in the corners. So your high point is
So
your,
Bring it from out back
you're bringing it all the way to the front,
down to the front.
and then it's coming into this constructed wetland.
Yeah, so we're tying these 2, 3 catch basins
Okay,
and then out to the wetland, constructed wetland.
okay.
We'll have to use some of the, rocks and the ledge on site to kind of put a small wall in this corner just to keep this, because we're a little higher up here, 120 versus 113, so we'll have to just use the rocks we find on site to hold up this corner. Other than that,
How did you propose to mark your limits of work on this one?
the silt fence,
Well,
in the silt fence tree line.
the silt fence didn't work last time,
There's actually a stone wall that goes right all the way across here.
so you got kind of a natural barrier
Yeah,
there.
and that's what we cut back to, was that stone wall. I didn't want to disturb it.
Okay, all right. I don't have any other questions for the applicant.
Got math questions.
You got a math question?
Yeah.
Shoot.
So if I'm reading the letter and the plan right, the reason for increasing the wetland is to handle the water flowing off of the cleared space?
No, the initial reason was that
Like a
there was
compton.
too much ledge in the constructed wetland. And even if we hammered out that ledge, at the bottom of the pond still would have been ledge, which is impervious. So what we did was, in order to compensate for the ledge that we're leaving in the pond, make it bigger.
We're gonna lose a little volume in the bottom of the pond because of the ledge, so we added more
You
volume
can see, there's a picture
on
of
the
it.
side here, and then.
They added more volume in two ways, by expansion and then by elevating the berm.
Okay. So,
What does that do to your spillway when you elevate that berm?
They raised that another foot as well.
Okay, all right.
yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of if the water comes off, like, is that gonna change the intended water level? You know, cause I'm assuming there's a plant community that's intended for this, and if you have that much more water going up, you know, where's sort of the up and down, left and right, how does that math work? So that, are we gonna be flooding out plants for longer than they were intended to be flooded, or, you know, those
Still
sorts of.
proposing the plants in the same spot, that there's, depending on where the plants are, there's plants that are along this kind of a swale or more, can handle wet and dry periods, and, plants along the sides slopes are more dry. So that doesn't, there's no change in that.
But I
in terms of
understand
plantings.
Brian's question, because if this channel right here hasn't increased in size, you're gonna put more water in that channel, so where you expected your first shelves to be, or your changes to be in vegetation, that may be different now, or
Yeah.
not?
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I
but we-
understand what you're asking, yeah.
Makes sense.
We made this one bigger, based on the expansion.
Okay, so you do have some more
So, yeah,
length to
so,
that
yeah,
existing,
That one there.
all right.
And since this is apparently phase one that I don't know, obviously, we gotta defer to your, site visits on this one.
Phase one was cut off. There's nothing really changed in here, other than they found this rock, so they made this bigger, extended that base channel, and then raised the berm up, the rim up a little bit also.
And we did all the stuff in the back that they uncovered it to do.
Correct. That's all after the fact.
This was more of a straight shot coming in, swale before I ended up rotating this and doing more.
Okay.
That length ends up being
Does the propane tank placement bother
60
you at all?
feet.
No, it doesn't.
And then the other half of this question, which has to do with the ledge, what's the underneath the ground in place? Is there more shelving underneath? Is this gonna be poorly drained fake wetland or constructed wetland or whatever? But is it gonna, stay swampy?
It's been there long enough that I've seen it come and go. I've seen it be full and be full for a week and then drain right out and appear to do what it's supposed to do. So far, it has done the job, so, no,
So
I
that line
haven't.
of worry from what you've seen is okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen a couple of storms get dumped in there and it's handled it pretty well, so. The only thing I would say is that your O&M plan ought to be beefed up a little bit, because you're gonna get a lot more silt in those back catch basins now than you originally planned on.
Yeah.
Because now you've got a dirt or crushed stone lot, which is, the crushed stone's gonna grind up into fines. And you're gonna wash a lot more material into those. So you made those catch basins there may be on a little bit different schedule when it comes to cleaning them out.
Yeah, the back three.
Yeah.
What was in the area that was cleared previously, up like shrub? Upland shrub?
See, that's beyond the, that is beyond the driveway, right?
Yes,
It's well beyond the driveway,
driveway's
so.
right back here.
So I guess if it was here, that where they.
What did you take out of there, Bill?
There was trees,
I mean, other than
metal.
the whole site.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of knew the characterization of the site. It wasn't, there's good sized trees and there was a little bit of everything. It hadn't been cut in a long time. It hadn't been, no one had been out there in a long time. These stone walls were all buried with vegetation, that kind of setting that you'd see in the New England woods, so.
Yeah, that's what
It was, yeah.
There was trees, there was tires and metal and all sorts of stuff.
New England woods.
Well, this site here, I don't know if you've been with the board long enough to remember what
I
this.
was not here.
Oh, there were tractor trailer loads of material taken out of here, tires and everything else. The people that own that guy he used to be out the Newbury landfill since I was like 5 years old, bringing stuff home, and so the yard showed it.
Okay.
It was absolutely amazing. We probably ought to be carrying this guy around on our shoulders instead of prosecuting him anyway, because that was a huge mess that he cleaned up,
Yeah.
huge mess.
Taken, I think, now 1,800 tires off the property. There are trees back here where the sapling grew up through the tire, and the tires are this high off the ground.
Wearing like a bracelet.
Yeah. And I can't even tell you how many dumpsters of metal and.
He had a pile of bicycles out there the size of a house.
Bill, when did you start? When was this?
Oh, you know,
I got some
I'm
great
gonna say-
pictures of the place.
I wanna say 2015 maybe?
It just seems like forever, Bill.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Yep.
Again, I don't have any other questions, other than I want something in the O&M plan acknowledging that those basins are likely to fill up because of the nature of the material there. Other than that, I don't have an issue with the guardrail, the propane tank placement. You've expanded this greatly. It appears as though this works. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
With the guardrail, it's just that it was supposed to end right here. I extended it so it would be in front of the propane tank.
And took some out the other side.
Yeah, took some out, over here that was gonna go across the driveway, because we're gonna use this back driveway for, emergency access for fire trucks. So we took the guardrail out, put a big snow fence in that will open like that.
Are there any butters here? Would anyone like to speak on the project? I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move that we approve of the conditions cited tonight.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to keep photos?
Please.
Bring back fond memories.
Clean up your tires and enough that you can like make money on that curve. You can recycle them and make things and
How
sell
many,
them.
how many golf
Like-
balls did you have? A
I had
55 gallon drum?
4 55
Four
gallon
55 gallon drums of golf balls. Of golf balls?
We
Yeah.
go to the golf range.
You have no idea what this place was like. You can't imagine.
This guy just like made a hoarding look amateur.
Oh, yes, yes. This was quite a sight. What have I got in here?
And here's the back. Oh, nice catch.
There we go.
Yeah, that was new tonight, right?
This was the first hearing for this
Okay,
one?
good,
Yes,
that's
it
what I
was
thought.
brand new, so you guys are all set.
Oh, is it tanks in the ground?
Yeah, you did your introductory remarks under the law and blah, blah, blah. It felt like it was new tonight. Good to check that.
No, no, it's not. I'm only seeking, I'll tell you in a couple of days, so it's not a big deal at all. We have a request for determination of applicability to resurface an existing driveway from Gail Whitley at 31 Northern Boulevard. I think so, Gail, we're all set. Gail lives next to 35 Northern Boulevard, across from 10th Street. And you remember the woman that we had in here, and we were talking about the driveway? Well, the guys that did hers did Gail's at the same time, so,
There's no confusion over what may have previously, where the walls were.
fortunately, with this one, they did exactly, they coated the driveway exactly like it was historically. And I drove down there and checked on it, actually, so I can tell you that that driveway is where it was. It was in decent shape to begin with. I don't have any issue with the recoating. And that's really all I got to say on this one.
It was just basically a resurface.
It is just a
Okay.
resurface, yeah. She
Right.
did,
Plows, people pulling in, it
Yeah,
was just.
this was different than 35.
Yeah, I didn't.
I got, no problems, Gil, no. Any questions or comments from the board? I'll close, are there any abutters here that would like to speak? Would anyone like to speak? I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Gil.
Have a good evening.
You too. we have a request for determination of applicability for Phragmite control throughout the Great Marsh from Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, Peter Fittman. Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. What you learned from that?
Anyone want to explain what we're doing?
Yeah, I think you get a chair also, so. Good, how are you tonight?
So this is a continuation of a permit that the Wildlife Refuge filed for some years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And we're continuing to do the work that we've been doing off and on, but primarily on the last 10 years, which is to treat the Phragmites invasive plant in the high marsh areas in Newbury, which includes Chancellor's Island, Woodbridge Island, Plumbush area, down, we'll be treating all along the refuge property down in Newbury, and then up the Parker River and part of the Mill River in Newbury as well. So anything that's in the high marsh we've been treating, we want to continue treating it. It usually takes 3 or 4 years to get rid of it to a level where we can get it to maintenance levels. Much of the bulk of the marsh south of the Plum Island Turnpike is maintenance level treatments. It's really some of the more troublesome areas or areas that we haven't been able to get to that frequently because of just logistics, like up towards the Governor Dever and the Golf Course, the Parker River, and then there's just massive amounts of it along the Merrimack River. We've made some pretty good headway, but that's where we're at.
And for people that don't realize what Peter and I have been doing, this is not only in Newburyport, but it's done in Salisbury, Ipswich,
Rowley,
we've done as much as we can to really take care of the whole of the Phragmites and the problem from the New Hampshire border to probably Wintersheet, right down towards Essex.
Yep, and generally what we find is, the next, we always treat it in the late summer because that's when the chemical will get down into the roots and kill it most effectively. We always find that the following season when we go out and do our recon, we've got a lot of native vegetation coming right back in, so there's no planting needed or any of that. The native plants are hardy enough once you get rid of the invasive.
Some of the old sites we walk on, the only way we know the frags are there is you can feel the old stalks, the old dead stalks, as they crunch, as you walk through them.
Yeah, generally mosquito control is mowed during the winter to get rid of the standing dead Phragmites, so that the following year we're not going out and having to fight through that, all that.
That makes sense.
So,
Peter, it's important work. I fully support you.
Where's the
dam? The Great Marsh.
Where's the dam?
Any questions for Peter or Jeff?
I echo your sentiment.
What's that?
I am with you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, important work.
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, we got, the funding comes from you for this year.
Would any,
I have my surfland hat on.
would anyone like to speak on this project?
Could I ask you a question?
You certainly.
I'm John Killam. I live on the Parker River. Who are you? Doing fine, thank you.
Are you the salt side or the fresh side?
I'm on the north side.
No, salt side or fresh side?
Salt side.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm in the Sound area.
Okay.
And what you're doing is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I've been battling them since I got there, and just by going there and pulling them out,
Yep.
I've been able to manage it, but I can see further upriver, closer to the bridge, you can certainly see a lot of folks up there struggling,
Oh, yeah.
or totally ignoring it. But what kind of evidence do we see of them of them being taken care of by your process?
We've worked hard to begin the process further down on the coastal regions because they were manageable, and that's where a lot of your wildlife values, begin for
Right.
coastal finfish and birds and stuff. And we started with a refuge years ago. So we started in Salisbury and Newbury and Ipswich and Raleigh. in Essex in the more coastal zones. As far, before we had the, resources to start to go upriver. The idea is, if we're treating frag, we're treating the symptoms, we're taking care of the seed. It used to be that we thought the seed from Phragmites was maybe 2% to 2.5%, vital. It's now, Greg Moore's been doing a lot of studies and things, it's like 32%. Which, if you look at all the seeds on one tassel and you think of a big monoculture full of all those tassels, that's a lot of seed.
Yeah.
So if it hits the right spot, it's gonna grow. So that was the idea in our maintenance program, was to take away some of the seed source. And we've started, as we have another grant that hopefully we'll get, which will expand what we've been doing. We had the Sandy grant, which was $2.9 million. For people that have lived here a long time, you drove down the Plum Island Turnpike, you saw a lot of frags. And we've certainly done the best we could to mitigate that.
Is this a spray?
Yes,
Spray.
yeah, it's rodeo habitat mix that we use 50/50, which, and that's what the experts recommend is most effective.
Refuge, mosquito control, and endangered species, that's what they recommend.
Without the work that these guys are doing, there would be very little access off a high road into the salt marsh. Prior to these guys working, when you walked down through my property and came out the end of the woods and tried to walk into the salt marsh, it was 10 or 12 feet high and it grabbed you in the thighs. You were exhausted by the time you got 15 feet into it. You couldn't even access the marsh area.
Yeah, we've opened up the whole south side of the Merrimack River there. I mean, you used to, cross from the refuge and the airport and stuff, you couldn't even see the river. Now, that was major effort to get rid of that. And that's out now, and we're trying to get it, we're never gonna get rid of it completely, but we wanna get it down to a maintenance level where we can just go out with a backpack sprayer, a bunch of guys doing that, which is much cheaper than getting the equipment that we've been using, boats and marsh masters and all that sort of stuff, and, hundreds of gallons of treatment to backpack spraying, and that's where we're at south of the turnpike for the most part. These other places that we want to try to treat this year and the following few years is what we're shooting for now.
Frank, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. Can homeowners use this spray?
Next question.
Yeah, right. Is this something that has to be done by you guys, or?
I mean, that's a question for Doug. It is a little bit more of a process. They're gonna have to file.
Yeah, you have to file just like these guys have. And the only concern that we have with homeowners is homeowners buy and apply sometimes not by the directions. And when you've got professionals doing it, you're more apt to have a treatment that is more environmentally friendly and less harmful to collateral damage. So if you come in with an application and it's well done and we've got a little bit of comfort that you kind of know what you're talking about, then sure, we'd love to have you help in the battle, but we want you to do good, not harm.
So you could, if you did put a proposal in, you could hire a company like these gentlemen to do it, or?
If you permitted your property to be treated, then you could hire most anybody that is licensed to put it down in those environments, yes.
And certainly, if we're in the area and that's an area we're treating and we have landowners' permission, we're not treating on any areas, by the way, without landowners' permission in any towns. If we're up where you guys are, we have your permission, we'll treat it.
My whole backyard has it. The whole.
Yeah, the reason we're in the open high marsh is because, it's a little bit, it's under stress there. It's under more stress than on the upland edge because it's not getting the same amount of fresh water. On the upland edge, you're getting groundwater runoff
and elevation.
Yeah, and it's sort of self-contained. The Phragmites doesn't migrate. Where it is on your property, it's probably not gonna migrate out into the marsh any further than it is. And so it's containing itself, and we're not as concerned about that. But where it is in the open marsh, we're worried that it'll start to coalesce, and it creates its own environment that it can start to expand and grow, and that's why we want to get rid of that.
What it does is it falls on itself and creates elevation, collects fresh water, and it's like, makes its own environment. But I mean, there are certain issues coming up for landowners, I imagine, in Salisbury especially, in places like ours, where you have fire hazard. I mean, frags burn like heck. I've never seen anything like a frag fire.
It would be scary.
Oh, yeah.
Frank had a controlled burn on Phragmites, and when we get the tires were vaporized inside it. It was just like the hottest fire I've ever seen. So.
I was gonna point out, just with the map, not related to what you guys are doing, we're asking us for permit, but, but I think you answered it with that previous answer that I know, and I'm sure you know too, the Little River drainage
Yeah.
has a heck of a lot of phragmites on it, and is that the same, you guys just think that that's kind of
Yeah,
working
it's
out?
as you start to get up into the Little River, it's more on the upland edge stuff, you know.
A lot of what we're doing, and it's a really good question, is also for, for resiliency, for the Great Mass resiliency, for storm surge and all that stuff, so you're gonna get flooding when you start to, funnel up the rivers, and then flooding would occur anyway, no matter what was there, because of the constriction of your bankings, but part of what we're doing is not only for wildlife values and everything else, but it's to try to make the marsh last as long and stay healthy as long as it can ahead of, sea level rise.
Yeah, boost the resiliency of the marsh, and native vegetation is much more effective than invasives, of course.
How long has this program been going on?
Oof.
Probably 2006.
I was gonna say, I think we've gone through at least a couple of revisions with the Audubon with permission
Yeah,
slips.
yeah.
I've signed 2 or 3 of them for them, so.
I know I got 3 NACA grants that are 3 years each, and the Sandy grant, which was 2 years, and the 3rd year, so yeah, 12 years anyway.
This started out with these guys going out into the marsh and covering the complete Great Marsh by foot, a little bit by boat, but by foot, by a combination of both things, and mapping every single piece of phragmite they could find out in the marsh.
Walking around it with a GPS, diameter, and ambient vegetation.
Yeah.
But we needed a baseline to make a presentation for just how much there was.
Yeah. But not every year do we spray all of it. In some years we only had enough and would be selective where we sprayed, so, you might not, in the early days, it might have taken us, 5-6 years to cover at least once every single stand, but some of them got hit twice, some of them 3 times, depending on what we were doing.
All right, you guys ready to move on?
I just have one more
Sure.
sort of ancillary question. So there's quite a bit of phragmites in some drainage ditches alongside town roads, and the DPW does whatever they do. They either dig them out or sometimes they mow them. I mean, is there any better way to do that, better time? Is there any recommendations for
They could
DPW work?
use chemicals if they wanted to. I mean, it depends on the situation. Sometimes it's just easier to dig it out by the roots, and you're not going to get it all. It'll come back a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it all depends on.
I'm on Boston Road, and it's a very long
Yeah,
ditch.
there's a lot there.
And
Dan,
it's-
we try to get it late,
Yeah.
right into the second week of September, because everything is translocated. Everything that needs for the plant to have for the winter is being put down during those weeks. So that's when we try to get it, because everything's surging to the rhizomes and stones. Those areas, Doug would know more, and you guys would know more. I mean, we're pretty much at home on the open salt marsh, because all the rules and regulations apply to us out there. When you start to get alongside of the roads where there's fresh water and other things, it's a little harder.
Other than the areas where there's endangered species habitat, the town has the authority to maintain all those ditches.
So,
Now, one of the things they probably ought to do, especially on Boston Road, the ditches are already too deep. And if you're not sure of what you're doing, when you go in to clean a ditch, you take out root mass and dirt and everything, and next thing you know, your ditches are way too deep, and you're keeping water in them. It's probably a better idea for the town to go down and try and get a boom and mow those areas, and then come along after, I don't care if it's even with the teeth of a backhoe, and try and rake the stuff out of there and remove the vegetation. The one thing about cutting it and removing it and having it decompose somewhere is that vegetation through transpiration is taking up your nutrients, your stuff off your street. If you let it just die and decompose, it changes the timing of that material getting into the environment, but it doesn't remove it from the environment. It's still in the plant material. So when it comes down and decomposes, it just stays there. By removing it, you're actually doing the water quality a
if they can cut
favor.
it and spray it, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That would really work well.
Yeah.
I mean, if they cut it, spray it.
The comment though about water quality, I'm not sure, there might be more to the story than that, because I know in the Meadowlands outside of Manhattan, they actually found peat in the middle of the Meadowlands, which is a really sensitive thing, and the only reason the peat was there was that it was surrounded on all sides by frag. And the frag took the hit of all the nasty water, and whatever was getting in had been sort of cleaned up enough, so the frag was super dirty, but.
Well, the Meadowlands were originally
Oh,
salt
yeah.
marsh, so, you know.
Yeah, they were the greatest breeding ground of the salmon and all these, yeah, it's
so.
made the Great Marsh look like the tiny marsh.
We're lucky still in that we retain, you know, some, I mean, our marshes are still good.
Right.
And we better ever hope that we reach, you know, that much of an urban area around here that we
Yeah, that's,
end up with those kind of problems.
yeah.
We ready to move on?
Yes.
All right, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, any opposed? Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Carter,
Oh, yeah, sure.
9 houses, yeah.
Let me know if you, excellent, thank you. See you later, it's very interesting.
Essentially sold it from my end of my property, so all the way the rest of the way out, house,
Dig it out.
Yeah, again, I hate to see them, they dig that stuff out. and they rip the ditches deeper and deeper and deeper.
Evergreen.
It's really-
yeah, it's at the old,
Little cemetery.
yeah, you go past
Funny,
it.
they
keep going.
drive on the
Close,
road,
close.
Towards the very end.
all snow packed.
That's right.
Beautiful area.
It's pretty funny.
Yep, yeah, it's a riot.
I've seen oil trucks, I've seen BMWs, I've seen all sorts of stuff, but I'm down on, right across from you basically,
Although this
down
time of year-
Mars.
Yeah.
Oh, at least twice a winter,
August,
somebody who doesn't
September,
realize those
yeah,
ditches
October,
are there.
magical.
Yep, that corner by Tolman's.
Yeah,
You know, no middle one, that's another one.
It does.
We have a request for determination for the construction of a retaining wall and to remove ledge by blasting from Frank Hughes at 24 O'Reilly Road.
when was this house built? Oliver was not working well for me today.
When was this house built? Oh, Frank.
It was, about 11 years old, so.
Okay.
Gentlemen, I have, engineered diagrams of the proposed wall, so I don't think that was the package.
Frank, I was hoping your blaster was gonna be here tonight, because most of my questions are really for him. I talked to him on the phone, and I talked to him on the phone because Rachel came in and she had some concerns about her well. And he told me that they don't really do wells, that's not part of what they do in their pre-blast surveys.
It's like,
So I thought, well, maybe the guy's from New Hampshire, because I looked up the New Hampshire rules and regulations, and when you're in New Hampshire, you have to go to other rules and regulations other than the blasting rules to bring water quality into it. But in Massachusetts, you don't, and so I was kind of confused by, he's got on here that he wasn't gonna do any pre-blast surveys because everything was in excess, any structures he wasn't in control of, which would be structures other than your home, were 960 feet away, and so no pre-blast surveys will be required. Well, I don't know where you got the 960 from, because it's actually 250 feet. And the closest house is probably 150 feet away. I think that line is 142 feet on your property line. So Rachel would certainly be into it. And then he went on to add that they don't do anything relative to water and wells. But this is 527 CMR, so these are the regulations that he blasts under in Massachusetts. And it includes his blast analysis, which comes first before his blast plan. So I didn't see his blast analysis, I just saw his blast plan. But it talks about utilities, including gas lines and water supply lines. So I could interpret that either way, to be municipal or not. But then when you go over here, it talks about your pre-blast inspection surveys. Structures such as pipelines, cables, transmission lines, cisterns, wells, and other water systems warrant special attention. And they said they don't give any attention to those, so that concerns me.
I think he made arrangements with Rachel to do a survey, have it done. I'm almost positive he did.
Okay.
It's gonna be extra money.
Well, I think he did too, but again, I don't think he's including the water portion of it because that was her concern. And when I talked to him and his administrator on the phone, that's what he said to me. He says, we don't do anything with the water. I said, you don't even do any water quality testing, pre-testing? And he said, no, not unless they asked for it. So that's my concern with this. Is more, and then the other concern I would have is, what's he blasting with? Because he could end up with nitrates and nitrites in the water system. And then what's he gonna do with what they call their muck? And their muck is just their blasted material, whatever it is. Because that blasted material is gonna have that explosive residue on it. And if they leave it out there and it gets rained on, then it leaches into the soil. So it's kind of important to get your spoils out of the way quickly, but they don't make any mention of that. So it concerns me that they're not either aware of it, or it's just so commonplace with them that they don't mention it.
I guess what the remedy would be is to have her water tested, is that? I know we brought out dig safe and they plugged the property for electrical and, water. They've done that, they flagged it out, dig safe's already been there. So, I know they flagged it out. Her well is quite a distance from the area that's being blasted. It's on her property line more towards the street. So I don't know how. And I know they've done a pre-blast.
And listen, I am absolutely not really concerned with water level or turbidity. She's apt to get a little turbidity after the blast, simply because you're gonna open up fissures. So you're gonna have some fines that may work through those larger fissures. That may change a little bit. She's apt to go from having a static level to dropping a little bit, because as those fissures open, they're gonna fill with water. Then, the water that's there in the ground is going to flow into them, so maybe having a little bit of a lower water level for a short time, but they'll fill right back up again. And then over time, chances are those fissures are gonna either clog with the new sediment, or they're gonna collapse and close a little bit. So her water quality and the amounts of her water should go back to normal. There shouldn't be any issues. It's more of a contamination issue, and my insecurity with what he's presented so far.
Okay, I'm pretty sure she has an artesian well, so it's gotta be pretty deep. It's not a shallow well, so I don't know, maybe that could still, I don't know enough, well, I'll defer to you.
Well, and I know enough to get into trouble, because we don't do these every day, so I did a lot of homework to get up to this speed.
Well, I'll tell you, I tried everything but the blasting. When they first bought the property, I tried to hammer it out, they couldn't do it. It was just that the ledge is too hard. When they came out, they drilled a couple of test holes to try to, it's rock splitters, to split it hydraulically. The splitters broke. It's very, very hard rock. So I've tried everything to do. The problem is, I can't back out of my driveway without hitting this ledge. And it's the way you can see on the property plot on the thing, the driveway's L-shaped. So to get out of the property is difficult. To get out, to back out, you have to do like a 6-point turn. To get out, you gotta drive up on the grass to do it. And that's where the septic system is. So I don't wanna damage my septic system by having to go on the grass, because it's right there. So that's the issue. That's the issue I have.
I looked at the plans for this and I looked at a lot of imagery. I wasn't on the board then. But it seems like in my short time on the board, we increasingly see these issues with these houses that get permitted where they're entirely or almost entirely in the buffer zone in places like Old Raleigh Road, where there's just not enough room to have a house and everything.
That's why they're in the buffer zone. Yeah.
Well, this house isn't in the buffer zone. It is at the edge of the buffer zone. It is the buffer zone. And so, here we're talking about building retaining wall that on the very edge of the buffer zone, and doing more work. And this house is here. It's just symptomatic of, I think, of a lot of the stuff we see with these houses and that we talked about. Yeah, so I don't know how to approach it, because it's kind of like houses like this end up being just banded continual work in the buffer zone, and it seems like, in my short experience.
We see a lot of them.
Okay.
We see a lot of them.
Are there any alternative approaches? I mean, like you just said, so the goal of this is to be able to, in the end, pull out without smashing your car into something.
Right.
Is there anything we can encourage that, like, if there's more space near the road that's paved, there's more of a turnaround out there and you can back in easily, and so you come off the road? Is there anything like that might?
No, actually, the driveway that I use right now is an easement. If you look at the planning board, when they planned the lot, my driveway to my frontage goes, abuts the wetland right on it. If you look at the original plans that were approved by the town, they have my driveway coming up right along the marsh.
So this is actually his frontage.
Yeah.
This is how he gets in right here. Here's his driveway.
And the frontage is falling into the marsh, and that's why we have retaining wall?
No.
What's the new retaining wall
No,
for?
the retain,
The new
can I
retaining
steal
wall.
this from you for 1 minute? The old retaining wall, the existing retaining wall is right here.
Yep,
And the new retaining wall is that piece right there
Right.
that you see 30 by, Frank, that says 72. Oh, 72 must be the setback from the ledge to the wetland.
Yes.
That's your blasting,
Right.
yeah. Okay. So that must be 30 by maybe a 12, 15 foot.
right, yeah, no, so I was just, we've been on site and right now there's runoff coming from the driveway down into the marsh, and he's
It could,
grading the.
yeah, it's 45
It was
degree
one of the things he did put in his narrative, that
I
it
saw the
would,
bid.
that it would likely help reduce that runoff off the driveway into that direction and send everything back down the driveway.
And the light, the sun, there won't be any effect from the sunlight. Sun, right, it's to the east.
No, that's fine.
So,
We're just replacing yard.
Yeah, we're just replacing the yard and getting it to come back this way, so like, it really, I understand your concerns
Yeah,
relative to the distance, and the amount of buffer zone taken. But in this case here, the wall doesn't give me any heartburn.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
the ledge gives me a little bit of heartburn only because I can't get this guy to commit to
Sounds
this, to 527.
It sounds like a consistent.
And 527 is really the fire department, but we have,
That's usually
we have water quality
Low
and
on the
wells
side.
and things like that, so.
Do you want to continue till we can get the answers from the blasting?
We can either continue or contingent upon getting the blasting plan. It's however you guys want. If you guys want to look at that blasting plan and review it, then we need to continue it, and review it as a board.
And again, just, so this is there something else going on besides the driveway turnaround? And, I mean,
There's a,
Is
and
this
then
it
we
right
can't,
here?
we can't talk about moving
This
the lawn
is right-
around and.
well, there's a retaining,
That's the retaining wall,
This is
this
the
white
existing
line
house.
on the
So
other side.
he wants to build he's gonna put a new one in on the other side of the driveway here.
So what's this here?
that's the ledge.
He wants to-
Right here,
That's the ledge that went left.
Okay, what would be the direction?
so here's the ledge that's blasted.
How far is this
Yeah.
box? Probably about 25 feet.
And then this thing here goes off like this.
25 by 12.
So this
It's
wall
about-
right
it's about
here,
maybe about 4 feet
starts
high.
over here, comes all the way down here, comes all the way around here. So he wants
So
to
linear
build a
feet,
section
25
here,
by 12,
fill this up.
37
Now everything
linear
will
feet.
drain
Yeah,
back this way,
roughly.
everything draining off his driveway.
Oh, so this is
So
rearranging
so-
the draining as well
As well as, so,
And
and
if
so
we
the
rearrange the
retaining wall to
draining-
me has a benefit to the resource.
Right.
And that's why I'm kind of drilling into the blasting, because that gives me more concern than the than the retaining wall.
Okay.
Back out of your driveway.
And then the idea of getting rid of the ledge when you bring up the retaining wall is that if you don't get rid of the ledge and what you pond, you flood, you create a little bit of a.
And his ledge is too high to deal with. He can't bring it up high enough to get rid of the ledge. That ledge is that gray stuff that you end up with. I don't care how you pound it, it turns into talcum powder. They have tried to remove it that way.
Is the garage doors here?
Say what they are, so they're right here, right here.
Yeah.
So if we get rid of the ledge, why don't we need a wall over here?
The property just
Fine.
runs down right into the, property runs right down into the marsh.
You're backing out and this is seems like two separate issues. One is get rid of the ledge so you can get in and out of your driveway.
It gives me some parking area to
Yeah,
that.
then this would be, would it take this ledge and level this ground?
I'd use some of it if it wasn't dirty, yes.
Yeah.
And
No,
that,
I could always could always build a wall first.
I would want to know what they're using for explosives before you use their, and I'll use the term muck, because that's the official term for it. Before you put the muck in the hole there, I'd want to know what they're using for explosive and whether that has any residual on that rock. That's all. And it's one of the concerns laid right out in 527.
527.
Yeah, 527.13 is the provision that talks about all your explosives, even firearms, your storage of ammunition, but it goes right through all of that stuff. This is what dictates Massachusetts, Mass General Law. Actually, this is Code of Mass Regulations, I should say, it's not
CMR?
NGL. CMR, yes.
527.13.
520, yes. Yeah, you want to write that down?
Yes.
It's right up here.
So like any
And Frank, this is only a small portion of that. Probably, this is the last quarter of it. The first 3 quarters, again, have to do with how you handle explosives, really nothing to do with the project.
I guess I could have them provide a written proposal on what your questions are regarding muck and the type of explosives.
If it would be easier for you just to have him call me and then me relate these things to him,
Yeah,
that's probably the best thing to do instead of trying to, do the phone game kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be great.
yeah, I can let him know exactly what I'm thinking and what I need to get some comfort.
He was gonna come today, I actually told him not to.
Okay.
I probably should have him, but he lives in Charlton, so on the other side of the state. So
Yeah, so he's got a little bit of a haul.
Yeah, but you'll get the answers for you.
Okay,
All right,
all right, Frank.
all right, great, thanks.
What I would recommend then is that we continue this meeting to the September 18th date.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in
You're okay with
favor? Aye. Is that,
I was hoping that maybe if I got the answers before that, and they were satisfactory to you, maybe you could vote on it,
Well, does
that's-
the wall, I guess what I'm trying to say is the wall, do you wanna get the wall done? And can we let him get the wall done if he wants to get the wall done between now and then? And wait on the blaster, or do you wanna do this all at once?
is it gonna be one project or 2?
Well, it may be better if I can use the material from the wall as backfill, that'd be great. So maybe getting the wall done might be the best way to go about it in the beginning, get the wall done. And from a runoff standpoint, that wall will probably keep anything from running down into the marsh once it's built, so.
I'm just wondering how we separate the 2 issues and fine for a partial and then not have him have to file again.
That's what that was my one other question.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to work through that process. When you were headed down that path, I was gonna add that I think the only way to get there is to fine for the project contingent upon him satisfying the board with the blasting analysis. And if it's something that the board members would like to see, as soon as I get it, we can get it out to the board members, we could get comments back, and then either write it or, we could get comments back, it just wouldn't be able to use it, we just wouldn't release it until we were satisfied with the conditions. And that could potentially get it to him much sooner than the 18th of next month.
Maybe okay with that.
So we will get this,
Fair enough.
so we'll get the new blast analysis from the blaster, and we'll review it internally. We'll vote on the project tonight, contingent upon us getting consensus as a group, when we pass this around.
I'm okay with that. Dan, you have any?
Well, you know something, and then we'll put it,
That feels
I
like-
don't wanna deliberate outside the meeting.
Yeah.
Right, that's
Let's
what you.
do, what,
Yeah.
reopen
Well,
hearing
what, can
briefly
we,
here.
can we sort of deny half of his RDA now, and then we can just sort of like do a new RDA? So we can approve the half that we're approving, and then if he's coming back anyway, next month, just bring in a new RDA for just that piece.
Yeah, but then he'd have to, well, it's up to him, it'd cost him another $100 for a legal ad, and, $150 for a legal ad, and those kind of things, because you'd have to re-advertise again. No, yes, you do, how-
Yeah, I guess
because-
technically, yeah.
Well, I mean, we can give him the choice, what do you wanna do? Because it sounds like, are we in a port?
Yeah, you've got a couple of options, and they're not awful, but they're not the best either.
Bureaucratic ninjutsu.
Listen, it's only another month, it's not the end of the world, I've been waiting for a while to do it now, so I, you know, we can just, if you wanna continue it to next month, that's fine.
All right. As far as keeping process clean and making sure we keep this right, I think it's the best, probably the best thing to
And
do.
that's
Frank.
fine,
Okay.
that's not a problem. So I do have to,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I do have to do another
No,
public.
no, no,
notice.
you don't have to do anything.
I don't have to do it, just have him call you.
Yes, have him call me, he's gonna work through me. You don't have to re-advertise, we're going to set this now, we're gonna continue this to the September 18th meeting, we'll go to a vote in 2 seconds. And then you'll just come in on September 18th, and I'll have some time over the next month to deal with the blaster, and if there's issues that we can't work out over the phone, then we'll have him come in on the 18th, how's that?
That sounds great.
All right.
Do you want these, copy of this?
If it's our, yes, please, yeah, we don't have that yet. So it would be my recommendation to the board that we grant a continuance with the applicant's permission to the September 18th date. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Good night.
I'm gonna put this in here, because I know I'll use it if I don't.
How come when they built that house, they didn't tweak it so that it wasn't facing the ledge? Isn't it?
I don't remember. I have no idea. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
that was 11 years ago, not even 11 months ago on lots. Come on, Ryan.
Fire department.
Point taken.
It's a legit question.
Like, just looking at the plan, it's flush with
Right,
that, the lawn is all over.
No, that's septic.
Well, lawn, septic, yeah, but.
It may have been relative to the septic system that's in the rest of the yard and the existing
Getting
ledge.
away from the
That's all I
ledge,
can
right,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all I can say.
Which is
Other than
like-
that,
Like,
there
put
had
a
been no other place
curve
for it.
in the garage.
We've got one more hearing, we've got one more live body in the audience, so. We have a request for determination of applicability to install an oil tank next to the existing home from John and Kathleen Killam at 52 Cottage Road.
That's right.
Hi, John.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm not sure exactly what you need.
We need just your tear sheet.
There you go. Is that what you mean?
Yep. Keep that one.
You'll have to-
There's no scope of alternatives written because there is no alternative.
Who wrote that?
Your wife did.
Probably per instruction from somebody.
Well, I says to her, you won't have an alternative, because you're not moving your oil tank out of, there's no way to move it out of the riverfront area, so you're still gonna be in the riverfront area. You know, yeah, it is I liked it though, I thought it was,
So my wife actually prepared some stuff here. So I'm not sure what you need, but this gives you a detailed explanation of what the problem is. I mean, it's really quite simple.
it is to me.
Yeah, and I had an extra copy of it, and I don't think, I just put an X there because that was gonna be mine, but I understand the details. The thing is, I get my oil tank in my barn, it's up in the backyard. The oil tank is about 100 feet from the home, with a line that goes underneath the ground. It's encapsulated by a piece of aluminum, so I believe that's the aluminum that goes into the ground. And I believe this is a disaster waiting to happen. That's just my feeling. That
What
is-
kind of disaster? There's so many choices.
Well, the real leak into the ground, that would be the only thing knowledgeable enough to know what kind of disaster that may occur. So that would be my fear. And so my intention is to kind of rectify that quickly. I don't think there's any way to eliminate the oil tank from the house unless I seek some sort of other alternate type of fuel. But the intention here would be to get rid of the old tank, relocate the new tank, and put that right next to the house. And I've got some pictures in there. I've got I'm looking at the Roth double contained system. The line that goes in the house will be going underneath the house now, rather than out of the ground. Underneath the house being that I got crawl space underneath. It'll be attached to floor joist. It will extend about 20 feet now, rather than 100 feet underneath the ground. Very simple.
What's it sit on now in the garage? A cement block?
No, it's actually sitting on the cement floor.
Oh, okay.
So the intention here would be, as it states in the description here, is to, I called Townsend Energy, and they gave me an estimate of what to do. I talked to them about the finer details. There's a couple of things that they have not put into the proposal, I'm just gonna talk to them about, that I plugged into my description, and that is to flush out the line.
I saw that.
And I also, and maybe one other thing, when they put the concrete on the ground, my concern would be, they say 3 inches. In order to put the concrete in the ground, it's gonna be level anyway, you know? So there's some work that has to be done to level that thing off, to make sure that it is straight up and down. And then they will, they have a rack that will be connected to the concrete, and then there are ties to take the
barrel goes
the
in the
barrel,
rack.
right on the rack, and ties that to the rack.
Oh, nice, so they don't have those screwy legs anymore.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, they just had some pipes that screwed into them, fitting the bottom, and, I mean,
So I'm
a
not
good
the-
shoulder against it would,
I'm not an expert on,
pancake it.
on things, but my indication is that what Roth explained there is good. I'm not sure if it's sufficient. Certainly there are other options out there. I'm not sure what the best option is. I'm not sure what you folks come across. So I'm here also for some advice. This was another one, Granby. Instead of stainless steel type of thing, this is all fiberglass and plastic. The beauty of white is that it's going to get dirty.
The side of the house that you want to put on, which side of the house, east, west, north?
It's on the east side.
Okay. Just thinking of, plastic and polymer getting some.
getting so much sun.
Yeah. Right. But, nothing wrong with that either. Anyway.
And it's got a cover, the one that I have for the Roth. I'm not sure what kind of cover options they have with the brand. I haven't even spent too much time with it.
We got a double wall tank, we're gonna end up with a sheet line, we've got hold downs, we've got concrete. Seems like it's safer than the unit that's in place now.
Yeah, it's an improvement all around.
I would agree, I don't have any questions, any other questions for the applicant, unless someone else on the board does.
You said they're gonna flush the line, you're gonna leave the 100-foot line and the 4 feet underground, you're gonna pull that up. And then, what do they do with oil flush things? Do they put them in the truck and take them away?
Well, I wanna tell you something, oil in your tank is
Still
$3 or
oil.
$4 a gallon.
Right, they're gonna
Oil
put
that they
back
pump out of your tank and put into their tank is hazardous waste.
in. Right. But,
So, to answer your question, my guess is they'll install the new tank, they'll take whatever oil's in the old tank, within reason, they won't wanna pump the sludge.
Right.
They'll put the oil in there,
Right.
maybe it's up to them what they end up doing. And then they'll end up having to take that tank, they'll have to swipe the sludge out of it, they'll have to clean it before they even transport it, blow their lines out, and they'll end up taking some kind of hazardous waste with them, my guess would be.
Right, and
From
that's
the
all the
lines.
above ground stuff, but the underground line, if I'm reading this, you're gonna do a flush of that.
Yes.
And then that just goes into another tank on the truck and they drive that away, they leave the uncaps arguably cleaned and flushed and just let it rot.
So let it stay in the ground,
Right.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
with that?
So you just made a statement here which made me realize that I should be careful about what they do with the sludge. Not that I should think of them being a dishonest organization, but when they take the sludge out of the whole tank, their intention was to take the top 80%, where they believe the bottom 20%.
Okay, so they've already thought it out, you've talked about
The
it.
top 80% would be what they would put into the new tank.
Good, that makes sense. Okay.
I mean, that just made sense to me, but I
Yep.
don't know what the reality of it
Yeah,
is.
the bottom of that tank could be rusty, it could, God knows what's in it, the chances it got water in it over time are fairly good.
Right.
So. All right, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion for this project.
I'll move to approve.
That's good.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Still a lot of moving, I just wanted to do this.
There you go.
So I just have to wait another week or two, or so?
It's about 2 weeks, at least two, probably about 3 weeks, because it takes us some time to get it out, and then there's a 10-day appeals period, but the 10 days is 10 state working days, so it's essentially 2 more weeks.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll call you when the permit's ready, and there'll be a date on it where it will have passed the 10-day appeals period, so it won't be a guess. All right?
Actually, nowadays, I have to wait until the appeals period is over because of the whole affidavit thing.
I thought that was only for Barrier Beach.
Sam and I looked at it and it looks like.
For all flood zone? Okay.
That's what it looks like.
So it looks like you're gonna have to come in and sign an affidavit. It seems as though anything that is now going in a flood zone or the Barrier Beach, I thought it was just the Barrier Beach, but I guess it might be flood zones also. There's an affidavit that you need to sign and have notarized, and we can do it right here. We have plenty of notaries, and you don't have to go look for it. We'll present it to you. So when you pick up your determination, that and a green card will be attached, so you'll sign that and have it notarized. And that is your acknowledgement that you know of no appeals to the project. Just something new that they're requiring now, so.
So when I picked up the permit, one of the things that Townsend Energy was recommending was that they take out a permit. What does that mean?
Well, Townsend's gonna have to go get a permit to do the installation of the tank itself.
Okay.
They'll have to go to the fire department for, permission for that kind of installation. The fire department will look it over for their safety concerns. So that's what they end up doing. If it's underground, it's another whole thing. They usually include me when it's underground because they wanna know what the water table is and things like that, as far as reading the plan. But that's not the case here. You're getting the permit that Townsend would normally come in and get, the environmental permit, you'd end up getting it.
So even though I'm using Townsend here, if I choose to use another organization, it doesn't matter?
I don't care who you use.
That's
As long as you follow and do what you said you were gonna do, it doesn't matter who the installer is.
Okay.
All right, where did the sign-off sheet go? Where are we? Did I take it? I got it right in front of me. Okay, nobody move. Nobody move. John, you're all set.
Excellent.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Folks, you do the same?
Take care.
See you.
Good night, John.
Talk to you later, Bill.
We had a request for a certificate of compliance from Marie Van Lulling at 8 Johnson Road, DEP number 50-1202. That is the last house on the right on Johnson Road. I was down there today. They did a great job, actually. It's all revegetated. Their stairways don't even look like they've been using them. There's dune grass in place. So it's my recommendation to the board, it is my finding, I should say, that the project was done in substantial compliance, and it would be my recommendation to the board that we grant the certificate.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So this will be a complete certification.
And I assume they dropped off some as-bills, yeah?
Well, yeah, I've got everything right here. I got a note from Mary Rimmer. Mary Rimmer said it was done in substantial compliance, so that kind of thing. So the plans were prepared by a professional that required that statement. And one of the few I've seen, it didn't fill it all up with lattice underneath, and it's open underneath. And
Yeah, it makes me nervous when you're like, hey, they did a great job. Like, wait, where are the pictures? Where are the... I want a 3D model to prove it.
well, it's funny, I pulled up at the street and I get out and I'm looking at the house and looking at the plan and, it's similar, but what the heck? I'm looking at number 3, not number 8, that's why yeah, these guys didn't do such a good job. This guy over here, he did. We had a request for a certificate of compliance from Jennifer Lapham at 173 Elm Street. This is DEP number 968. This is one that we no longer have a file for. So using best available information, I went out there to do my site visit. This was a swimming pool that was put in the backyard. It is right up tight against the house. The vegetation, it was well vegetated. They hadn't gone down off the slope of their lawn and tried to cut further and further into the woods. So it looked, again, using best available information, it's my finding that it was done in substantial compliance, and it would be my recommendation that we grant the certificate.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're gonna have a few of these, just to warn you that there's gonna be anytime someone comes in that has a DEP number less than 1,000 or less, you're gonna get this same speech from me that I've used best available, because those were records that we had to destroy relative to mold and mildew.
And I assume DEP doesn't have copies too, they recycled them, they lost them,
DEP usually, if they need something more than 3 years old, will call me and ask me for a copy.
Yeah,
So it's usually what happens, yeah, they're not very good at record retention.
I had to do an online training today about secure destruction of your good things. Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cyber theft and all sorts of stuff.
2008. That's this is, right?
Yes, yes. This was an old one, and he was, I went out, I was on vacation the day I went out to do this, but I knew he needed it, so I went out there and I came in here and wrote a letter, and I couldn't make him happy. No matter what, I couldn't make him happy, so. We have a request for a certificate of compliance from Rick Godsey at 177 Elm Street. It's on your next, it's over on the next page, I think, for you guys. DEP number 50-515. This was the same situation with the last one. DeRosa Environmental went out there, and because they were, there was a wetland replication on there, these guys did a great job with their replication area. They included some pictures for us. Somewhere here I got some pictures. Let's start with them down there and pass them around.
There's another one where the plans got lost originally.
Yeah, this is a 515. This one's even older. So plans weren't lost, but destroyed according to law. I had to go to the state records retention and get Dr. something out here, and actually took him to the site. And he was about from here to the camera from the door when I opened it up. He says, "Yeah, they're gone." You could smell it when you open the door. And I took him inside, and there was 3 to 4 colors on each one. And he says, "Yeah, those are dangerous. I wouldn't handle those." And he says, "I wouldn't either." So the state gave us permission to destroy 0 through 1,000. Plus about 3.5 feet of determinations and miscellaneous documents.
Yeah, you're right, it looks rather lush.
Yeah, they did a great job. So again, using best available information, I find it to be in substantial compliance, and it would be my recommendation to grant the certificate.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second? Third? All those in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed?
This new computer system with all the filing and all that, is there a way that it links up to the parcel map for the town?
Only, I don't think so, only on the point program, right?
It gives you, when you look at it, if you look at the property information, it has the map on that, and you can use that.
Yeah, I'm just, it's one of those things that seem like they're running in parallel, but if there was a way to, this is all way above my pay grade, but, because in the future, if you've got a tracking document across some of these parcels, as they split, as they coalesce, as they, break and form, like that wetland replication there, we're gonna lose track of it at some point, and it's gonna be regarded as a arguably natural wetland, because there won't be any records of it having been built, and I'm just wondering.
Well, moving forward, we're just starting to get the professionals to use the online applications.
Yeah, I'm like 3 steps ahead of things.
Jennifer
Or
is
4
taking,
behind, one or the other.
but Jennifer is taking all the applications that come in and scan them into the point program. So if you wanted to come in at some point and sit down at my desk for half an hour and wanted to go down through that point program, they've got the property records, you've got everything on that program that you need, to review. But so far, we can't get, there's no such thing as remote access to point, right?
No, they can access it, they can log log in as a guest, or you can set up an account.
Well,
if
there
you
you
want.
go. So you can get and see those,
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's a little bit irrelevant, but, just thinking of, you know, the next owner of that property, you know, the records were destroyed, you know, there's no, like, GIS, there's no anything to show that that wetland is built, you know, and if, like, let's just say they fill it in on the slide, you know, there won't be necessarily a record of it somewhere else.
I know what you're
Yeah.
getting at, yeah. I mean, it's one, for 20 years, I protected those records. I love that historic information that we had there. It was really upsetting, honestly, to have to get rid of
I
them.
bet it was,
really
because
did
that's all
not
your
wanna-
handwriting.
Yeah, I really did not want to get rid of them. But it is what it is, so. All right, what else we got for business here? Oh, did we sign that? Did I throw that around?
I signed it.
I don't know, did I sign it?
Did I sign
It's getting late.
Oh, the blue pen signed it, the blue pen squad over here. We took
The
care of
Blue
it.
Pen Squad?
People
Too easily
Yeah,
distracted.
Believe
Come
me,
on.
it was late for me before it started, so. The Kobe Village restriction. Does everyone know where Kobe Village is? Kobe Village, if you go past Triton and you stay on Elm Street, do not turn down school, and you just keep going out there, on the right-hand side, you'll come to Kobe Village. It's a little cul-de-sac, it's an open space residential plan, tight infrastructure, septic system out back, kind of backs up to Warren Mantas on one side. When they went in there, the planning board had them preserve a foundation. There was an old farmhouse on the left-hand side as you first pulled in. That farmhouse was torn down, but there was a foundation left, a brick and rubble foundation. The planning board thought that it may have some value to keep it there and restore it, but there was no provision to weatherproof it. So, you know, it was unbalanced fill. They filled the inside of it. A lot of topsoil and grass, unbalanced fill with an old brick foundation that was probably sand and lime mixture and not mortar to begin with, and it just blew apart over time, as you can imagine. So now it's just a mess. It probably wasn't filled or decommissioned properly because there's sinkholes that are forming in it. They want to get rid of it. I don't think the planning board or anybody in town opposes getting rid of that, but we hold the conservation restriction on it. So what I'm asking for tonight is permission from the board for me to work with town attorney to get the language prepared, to get that foundation out from underneath the conservation restriction. When that's prepared, I'll bring it back in, the board can review it, and then recommend or issue the decision to remove it from the restriction.
There are probably other things in that conservation restriction will stay though, right?
The whole restriction will stay other than the preservation of the foundation. Nothing else is on the table.
Yeah, as I understand, there's still an outstanding issue regarding access to the lands.
The backland,
Yeah, that
open
was
space.
promised initially. This doesn't affect that in any way.
No, it doesn't. I don't,
It's before my time, I could be wrong.
yeah.
Well,
No,
it does actually pertain in the sense that, you know, the CRs are built so that they don't get cracked open easily or often. And if we're gonna crack this CR open, and insert new language, then the issue you're discussing, then arguably you can insert it and see if, they're amenable. So,
You're gonna work with the town attorney anyway, so.
I'm gonna work with the town attorney, but the town attorney has no history on this either, so if the planning board has something, or if Martha has something that she could, I'm gonna speak to Martha then to see what
There's
she
something
can,
there.
all right, because I don't know, I didn't know about it.
You know, the whole OSRD plan must still be available. I don't think those are approved without the restriction being in place.
you know, because in a manner of speaking, any language, once it's cracked open, that we, as a board, wanted to play with and move around, it's, you know, arguably fair game, because, if I'm remembering this right, the agreed upon provisions and agreed upon documents stay live even while we're working on one that we've agreed agreed to until we then sign and record something new.
That makes sense.
And so it's not like we're cracking it open and like the thing might fall apart. And, you know, if they're willing to ask us for this, then I think it's fair for us to bring that topic up. You know, it sounds reasonable.
Hey, look, the village, the condominium association wants this badly, so we need access, so that we were supposed to have access, so it's not a bad time to bring that topic up. If that is indeed the issue, yes.
You know, and in that line of thinking, is there anything else going on out there that's worth bringing into this conversation as well, that, you know, you'd be?
Not that I know of. I'll go out and I'll take a look at the septic system and make sure that they're not growing trees on it, that they've mowed it on time. They did have a beautiful lupine field out there at one point. I don't know if it's there anymore or not, but it was gorgeous over that back area at one time. But I'll take a look out there.
So in the manner of speaking though, otherwise the land and its management has been well behaved and
Yes.
not really
Yeah,
troublesome.
it's one of those areas where it really doesn't lend itself to go out and walk the open space, so it's really kind of an unmolested area.
Doesn't really go, I mean, I remember it when it was approved, it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's not some
It'd be a little
trustee's
kind of-
property adjacent to it or
Right,
anything.
and they haven't found 1,800 tires that they're stashing in the back. Okay.
No 1,800 tires. So again, is it the consensus of the board that you'll give the agent permission to deal with the town attorney initially, and then that will come back to the board for future review?
Basically a revised conservation restriction.
Go by.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I think with that,
Do we need a
unless,
motion or anything for that?
well, let's make one, just to, that would probably be a good idea. That someone make, can someone make that motion, since it's about me, I don't think I'll make it.
Yeah, I move that we authorize you to work with the town attorney to make subject revision, or whatever you call it.
Revision to the conservation restriction at Colby Village.
Second, third.
What?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, guys, thank you. And unless the members of the board have other business, I think we're done, aren't we, Jim?
I just, you know, curious about this retirement business.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
We're gonna talk more about how you're old.
We're gonna talk a little bit about how I'm old,
Okay, cool.
and a little bit about how I won't be here forever. And so, you know, I certainly don't mind hanging around, helping the town out, and I'm not gonna leave them with 2 weeks to replace me, so I plan on sticking here for a little while, but again, that time is gonna come before you know it. And I would like someone to get comfortable running hearings, so that it's easy for you. And Brian made a great suggestion that maybe we should rotate around the table and everybody take a month, 3 months, a quarter or a third of the year, however you want to space it out. And you would do nothing but call the hearing. You would read the agenda. I am still doing all the heavy lifting. I'm still doing most of the talking. I'm the one that's paid to do the homework. You guys aren't. So that would still be my task, but at least someone would be comfortable sitting here in this chair.
And in the same vein, though slightly different, you know, you've got a wealth of institutional knowledge. Is there a conversation going on here in the home office about whoever comes on, giving them 3, 4, 5 months overlapping with you?
I think that the town administrator would be very open to that, because she's concerned that there is going to be a big, hey, let's face it, not irreplaceable. It is fist in the bucket.
Right.
You know, that's how it is with everybody.
Right.
In 2 months it'll be Doug Who. But you're right, there's a lot of knowledge. I can honestly say that over time, and especially with the move, someone that gets a hold of my computer is gonna sit there for months, because I have taken everything from my office. I hated to get rid of my records, I hate to throw away anything. So what I've done is I've scanned it and I've put it in folders, and it's in my computer. It's in there the way I organize things, which you're gonna lose the average guy, but you know, again, it's all there for someone to rediscover and to work with,
Right.
so.
But what I've got several assumptions that I'm assuming that the town doesn't necessarily have money
That would be my
And
guess.
so I'm assuming that to do something like that, we would need to get, some kind of, budget approval at town meeting. And so I'm wondering if this is a process that maybe, like, we need to say, like, make something formal, vote on it, approve it, and then like kick it down through the
Maybe.
bureaucratic chain
Maybe,
of.
and maybe there's another option.
Right.
If I retire, and the day I retire, you bring the new guy in, I could do my senior work off.
Well, in that case, I'll let you have a talk with Martha and figure out whether you'd rather senior work off or play that game.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
there's options, and there's options, and I don't plan to leave in a lurch, and I don't plan to leave, I don't plan to leave the town, swinging in the wind, so, definitely not, been here too long to do that.
And who's to say the next guy won't, last a year and leave the town swinging in the wind?
Who knows, I have no idea, the next guy could blow up everything, it's be up to him and you guys, and how you handle it. And that's why
You
we've
could
done,
always be a member of the board, too.
I could always be a member of the board. There's a lot of options, but I don't know what's
Just gonna
gonna.
make a mistake.
I'd like to-
I thought you thought a little of me.
That's wishing a lot. That's really it.
So,
Well, I thought the town meeting thing, let's vote on getting Doug extra money at town meeting,
We
that
can do
was,
that too.
that was exceptionally mean.
This wouldn't really have to go to town meeting, would it, to pay for an overlap, which is an obvious requirement for any?
no, it really, well, yes, because the budget goes to town meeting, but it would probably be more of an administrator approval. The conservation agent answers to her. So as long as it's within the budget and it's approved, it would probably be up to her as to how she wants to handle the transition. I don't know how she'd do it.
I can't imagine doing something like that.
Yeah, and something, an agent that knows the regulations and knows, and if they bring to this table the knowledge that they ought to, getting up to speed shouldn't be a long process for them. Shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in principle.
Yeah. The only issue that we have here is even, like, the last guy that left, Les Jones, he was on the board for 35 years. There won't be someone left on the board like that. So a lot of the stuff, like you said, a lot of the stuff we've done is just not, it's in here, even though you've done as much as you can.
Yeah, you have a lifetime in this town, knowing how it's changed and what things used to look like and what's supposed to go where.
Yeah.
That can't be replicated by anybody.
No, that's
They
tough
know
to
the
do.
laws inside and out.
And even that's gonna be tricky, because we're gonna have, dune law, river law, national park law, state WMA law, Great Marsh, like the overlap of jurisdictions and
The
ecologies.
the things that are tough for someone that hasn't sat here for the last 20 years is when the new guy gets down on Plum Island and you start to do what we've done today with the vegetation. The Wetlands Protection Act says you may not affect the vegetation. We affected it with the house. We affect it with every deck. You affect the vegetation every time you work down
The
there.
narrow medium.
And it is, and then you do some mitigation. And then if you're in the velocity zone, the department's gonna look at that differently than if it's a back dune environment. So now someone comes in the door and you're trying to counsel them a little bit on their project and how to do it and how to go about it. It's difficult when some of the things that you rule by are just kind of floating out there in the air. Try and find 2 feet of separation between your closest point of land and your closest horizontal member of your structure. Where's that in the Wetlands Protection Act that's a suitable separation between the ground and the bottom of the structure? You will not find it anywhere, it doesn't exist.
So then, maybe that's another line of questioning that between now and, your planned ending. Is there, you have learned many reasonable and realistic lessons on things like that. Is there a way to play with that and take those lessons and make them like town regs or town bylaw items?
No, not really, because to try and bring that to language for a town bylaw, as far as I can think,
Regulations, right?
yeah, you're gonna weaken the regulations. The regulation says you can't do this, and we're gonna say, well, you can't do it unless you do this. And so you can be more strict in state law, but you can't be less. So that's a fine line when even the department agrees on a little bit less than what their regulations say. But how do you put that down in writing, Brian, as a local reg, and keep it legal?
Well, I mean, maybe not for that one example, but if you can think of anything else, maybe that's worth playing with, because, again, coming at it from a significant distrust of applicants in general for no good reason. They're people, it happens. If you say the regs must be this, and like when the plan comes in, it's like, oh, you're missing this, fix this, you're missing this, fix this. You can get a really solid plan right on the table. Is you can just say, this is an incomplete submission right from the get-go. If the person sitting here has that line of regs, put a north arrow on it, and there might be some power in that institutional knowledge that you have being institutionalized.
Well, there is,
But maybe not.
A complete submission is when there's enough information on the application for you to make a decision. Period. It doesn't matter whether it's their name and address, because we've had this fight with the department, in this case history on it. It doesn't matter whether it's just their name and address. When it comes in the door, if I feel as though I can glean that information from it, I don't need to put them through any other process. So you're right in the fact that if you want, and let me digress a little bit too. One of the ways to control that right now is once it's all online, you can't submit it unless you print it, unless the fields that we want are filled in. So some of those things now that come in blank couldn't get submitted. You can't hit the submit button unless there's something there. So that's another way to check that, Brian, is just to have Jennifer or me work with Point to say, I want this one starred, I want this one starred. This doesn't come through without it.
And is the software now taken through the certificate of compliance and all that part of it? Or?
We had determination, notice of intent, certificate.
So the only two that are up, so that people can fill in and submit are the RDA and the NOI.
Right, but I'm just wondering, when we have the hearing and we get beyond that, if all that stuff is somehow retained in a way that you could go back and look at.
Yes, Jennifer can scan that right in and add it to, anything that's in that program, you can scan and add to the file.
Is that what, I think that going forward, it's gonna be helpful to avoid mildew plans.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's not gonna happen again, so. And then moving forward, it would be nice to take the stuff that we got archived from 1,000 on and enter it into the system, and then we could get rid of all the paper records that are out there.
And then, Jennifer, have you tried, Mayor speaking, applying for an NOI? Does it work okay? Is it user-friendly?
There's a few little things that I have to work with the software company on. Actually, supposed to be talking with them tomorrow. And it's just a couple of minor little things, like they're calculating a fee wrong or something like that. But the actual application process was very smooth.
The submission process, when you say submit a narrative, is it you do your NOI and then you can attach PDFs and all sorts of?
Any applicant can, after they do their initial submission, can either right then and there upload attachments, plans, etc., or they can go in after the fact and upload attachments.
Is it limited in any way? Like you can only attach Word and PDF and that kind of thing, or is it pretty broad?
Yeah, it is limited to file type, so I'm not sure they can do Word, but they can do PDF and JPEG.
Okay. This might be an impossible request, but this gets into the wetland comment that, about the replications. If there's a way for them to allow GIS submissions of some sort, so that as the computing matures and history moves forward, being able to grab a polygon of something that shifted or changed, primarily wetland applications, or the line of a wetland being pushed in or out according to one thing or another, that might be a handy submission to have on file.
That might be way above and beyond, but why
Yeah, it
don't
might
you email me exactly what you're talking about? Is it a specific like file type?
It's 6 file types, the way GIS works, but, right, you know exactly what
This
I'm
is,
doing
I
with this.
think you're,
I'm being greedy.
I think you're being greedy.
Alright.
Yeah, I think until the town has a GIS specialist, it's very, like, it's just like, just think about like separate plans coming in from all people submitting shape, or like somebody uploading shape files on different NADs, like all, like spatial frames of reference.
Well,
There's
right.
gonna need to be it's creating a lot of problems that without a paid person who really understands those problems,
That's a fair point. It's a fair point.
I think it's gonna be like super difficult.
If you really wanna know, you can take a PDF and register it, so you can.
That's true, you
Yeah,
can
Yeah,
georeference
you
it
can
on the
georeference
PDF.
PDF, yeah.
That's a good
But
point.
it doesn't give you the specifics of that particular feature,
Right,
you know?
but I mean, that's a good point, because with a lot of anyway, I'm fine, I'm being greedy. That'll be good.
Okay.
Got it.
Now,
Thank you.
you guys have done everything to avoid the subject. Let's get back around to, is someone else gonna chair this?
Sure, here, let's get some straws, we'll get pens. Let's just do the clicker. See who goes first.
I'll go first because I got volunteered
You'll go
when I
first.
wasn't here.
You got volunteer guild?
So I'm just gonna I'm gonna get it out of the way with all these.
Well, what happened was he
Three of the people at this
He
meeting
didn't
volunteered
show
when I
up,
wasn't
so we
around.
made him the co-chair the night he didn't
That's
show up.
Hey!
He thought we were joking, Brian.
Yeah, the co-chair should know what they're doing. That's right, the co-chair should get trained up. Alright.
So are you ready to take it next month, or do you wanna, what do you wanna do?
My wife's gonna be gone for 5 days previous, running up to the night before next month's meeting.
All right, so you wanna start in October? I'll do September's and you start in October?
Sure.
All right,
October,
all right,
1 month.
all right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's a start.
And somebody else can go.
It's a start.
It's
Hey,
a start.
you volunteered to go first, I'm proud of you.
Good man.
Yep.
If I remember to show up.
Oh, the night you're chair. Yeah.
You didn't even give me 2
We'll put
minutes
it-
left tonight. I was like 7:02. Maybe you'll just.
Here,
Well,
we
we
need a
got a
Google
quorum.
calendar.
If I've got a quorum at
Yeah,
seven,
go. Well,
yeah,
well,
we start, because we're supposed to.
Yeah, that'd be good.
If I don't have a quorum, then I will, I'll wait, obviously.
Then I will haunt you, I promise.
Okay, thank you.
Wow,
Yeah.
spooky.
So with that, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.